Today we will discuss the role that religion and education is going to play in the colonies. As we know, religion and education are still two very important things in today's society, and that can lead all the way to the founding of our country, as they were very important in the colonist view. So religion played an extremely important role in colonial life, and the type of religion that we're going to be discussing the most today is Christianity, and the forms of Christianity that are going to play a role in colonial life. We've learned about the Puritans and the Pilgrims and people that came over to escape this religious persecution. So obviously they're going to realize that religion is going to be extremely important in developing their societies and how they live. Children are going to grow up reading the Bible several times over. They're going to be preached to about certain moral rules, certain ways to live, certain rules that they have to follow that are all guided in the Bible, and they're going to follow this as closely as they can. In New England especially, worship is going to be watched very, very closely. People are going to be expected and demanded to attend Mass every single week. So on Sundays, there was actually people that were assigned to make sure that everyone was at church. These people sometimes even searched houses to make sure that the people were at the communities of worship instead of sitting at home. These services were held in town meeting houses, and sometimes these services lasted as long as 5 hours. So we're already seeing the importance of Christianity in setting up just a way of life in the colonies. In the 1730s, this reliance on Christianity and the importance of Christianity is going to even heighten. It's going to have a movement in the 1730s known as the Great Awakening, and this is going to sweep through New England, Middle, and the Southern colonies. What the Great Awakening is, it was a movement, a call for people to be pretty much more religious, and it was spurred by a feeling that there wasn't much people that had true religious and Christian faith in the colonies. Therefore, preachers from different colonies are going to travel from town to town and hold important meetings. During these meetings, they're going to give very fiery sermons that are going to touch the hearts and souls of very large crowds. And these very large crowds are going to listen to these preachers, and they themselves are going to not only just attend Mass more, but they're going to actually live the Christian faith out more closely in their everyday lives. They're going to pay more attention to the morality factor, and they're going to pay more attention to following the rules of the Ten Commandments and that sort of thing. This Great Awakening is going to have an extremely powerful effect on the colonies, and is going to change the whole outlook of the colonies. This is going to help spread the idea that people are equal in the eyes of God. More importantly, turning to more of the American Revolution, it's going to help encourage the really important ideals of liberty and equality that's going to actually help pave the way for the American Revolution and to break away from Great Britain, as we'll learn later on. Now, you're probably confused that since the Great Awakening spread the idea that people are equal in the eyes of God, you may be wondering, well, why is slavery a really pertinent issue in the colonies during this time period? Well, once again, this was a Eurocentric ideal, and this Eurocentric ideal is based on pretty much white individuals, and people saw themselves as equal as long as they were not a slave, essentially. And this was still a factor. It didn't really transfer over to the ideas that slaves will be equal until later in history, as we'll learn throughout the semester. When talking about the education in the colonies, there's going to be a lot of similarities to the importance of religion that we just learned about. So most children in the colonies receive very little formal education at all. New England children receive the most formal education out of all of the colonies. Towns in New England were actually required to have public schools. This was the first public school system that the colonies saw. The middle and southern colonies they did not require to have any schools at all. This is very different from today, as every state, every city is required to have the essential public schools needed. In New England, the idea for schools was strongly because of the Puritan ideals and their faith. They wanted their children to be able to read the Bible, like we saw when we learned about the importance of religion in the colonies. In the middle colonies, religious differences slowed the growth of public education. We learned that William Penn kind of greeted all sorts of religions into living in the middle colonies area. And because of these religious differences, they didn't really know how to educate their children during this time. Therefore, each religious group or family decided to educate their children how they saw it. So whatever they thought was most important, they educated their children in that way. Some religions got together and built certain religious schools, and others just taught their children at home, or children received no education at all in the middle colonies. In the southern colonies, families were actually too spread out to form any public schools. As we have learned, the southern colonies didn't really have any large cities. It was mostly just plantation farms and farmers as well. So that's going to be a little more spread out and harder to create and form these public schools. Wealthy families and their children were the ones that were educated in the southern colonies. These wealthy families may have hired tutors or even sent their children to England to become educated. Out of all this different type of education that was occurring in the colonies, the main focus for children was reading and writing. That's very similar still today, as reading and writing are essential components for education and becoming a successful 21st century learner. This picture right here is a kind of reenactment of what a one-room schoolhouse would have looked like in the New England colonies or even the middle colonies during this time. It was definitely not the schools that we see today. This was very similar to how many colonists lived. There's just one room. It had a fireplace, a chimney for the smoke to get out, and the teachers taught children of all ages in this one-room schoolhouse. The supplies that children have, it was very scarce. The schools didn't even have any chalkboards. Paper was very scarce. This was a lot of reciting and talking to the teacher during this time period. This right here is another picture of a sort of reenactment of maybe what a one-room schoolhouse would have looked like during the colonial times. As you can see, the teachers aren't going to teach one certain grade. They're going to teach a large age range of students, with the main focus being reading and writing.